And then I graduated to marbles. So I've got marbles and a doodle pad. So on the doodle pad, I've got a triangle, and I got 3 marbles, an orange, a yellow, and a green, and I got this Phaco alligator. Now my theory is that the more Phaco and toy it is, the less interesting. Did you see the dove yesterday? They don't like stuff that's obviously not real, that's obviously some of our accoutrements. They like, the things that they show interest in are things that are very realistic. So I come back on the 31st, and I find this right here. The doodle pad's been moved, and I didn't notice this at first. This is how subtle they are. Do you see that these marbles are in a triangle? The 2 outside marbles have been juxtaposed. The colors, the one that started off on the right has been moved to the left, the one that started off on the left has been moved to the right, and they're now in a triangle below the triangle. And when I finally noticed that, I said, oh, wow, we're onto something here. So on the second, on 2-1, I left it like this. Now, you can't see on the doodle pad, but I've changed from the triangle to a large stick figure shaking hands with a small stick figure. You get it? Big stick man reaching out to touch small stick man. And I left the 2 white marbles. And when I came back on the 3rd, 2 days later, I found not 2 white marbles, but the yellow marble that had been taken was brought back. Okay, so the yellow marble is back. One white marble is gone. And then on the 4th, so I reconfigured them, come out there the very next night, and the orange is there. And this is why I'm so glad that I take pictures, because I was confused. I said, oh, I thought that I left the yellow, but I really left the orange. No, when I got home and checked my archive, I realized that they had swapped out. And this is, to me, this is a very telling moment in this game. Somebody is playing a game with me. All right, so then I switched gears. I got a big blue. You see, there's a test in psychology called the token test, where you assess people's receptive language skills by using different sizes and shapes and colors. So this is my version of doing a well-known psychological test with these guys. So I've got a big blue and a small blue, and this is 2-4, and this is the way I left it. So I come back on 2-5, and the small blue is gone. And so I left a better alligator. This is a very finely made little toy alligator, and the blue marble, I left it like that. And on 2-6, I come back, the doodle pad's turned over. You can't see it, but there's a lichen right here, a big feather of lichen. And when you look underneath there, you see the little blue and the yellow. You see what's happening? Are you following this? It's really challenging cognitively to keep up with them. But underneath the lichen is where these guys were found. So the doodle pad was turned over. No, I am not shaking hands with you. Forget that. We're going face down with that doodle pad, that idea you got about us touching you. No. And then up under the feather of the lichen are these guys. All right, so I switched to green, 2-6-15, and I come back. The green marble is gone, the jar is open, the hot dogs are gone, and the jar is left standing on its mouth inverted. All right, and so here the blue was taken and the green was brought back on 2-16. That toy gator that I showed you at the very beginning, it had its foot bitten off early in the game. And I couldn't rule out that it wasn't something else, but who knows. But the foot that was bitten off was found with the green marble, as if to say, I know green, here's green, I got you green right there. I got you green and I'll raise you a green gator foot. And so to me, this is showing me, I can see colors. What are you worried about, Okay, so the honeycomb with the turtle was put out 12/11 in December, okay? And on 3/1, about 12 inches from the place that the turtle was left, the turtle reappears months later, along with the big blue marble that's been missing a week. This is, I mean, so at this point, this is where I'm thinking either Ranger Rick in this wildlife management area doesn't have anything better to do than mess with me. So I put out booby traps. I didn't want to put electronic traps because, you know, as our friend Kawani has told me, he said, don't do anything that makes them look like you're stalking them or you're hunting or anything like that. So I put out the old Vietnam thread thing. So I crossed the trail in several places with some brown thread. And you couldn't see it at night at all, and you could barely see it in the daytime, but I knew right where it was. The thread was not broken, and the anomalies were still going on. Which doesn't rule out boats. Somebody could have come in there by boat, but it is extremely hard to get back up to this place in the bayou by boat. I mean, you have to have a pirogue, and you got to portage a little bit. It's really not practical. Then on 3/5/15, the game got rained out. The whole place flooded. They moved. I think they went to high ground, of course. But that's a whole other story. All right, so that was the Boo Radley game, and that was probably the height, well, it is the height of my trying to interact with these forest people. But I began to notice along the way that the trees fall across the road prior to deer season. Trees voluntarily leap out and cross the road to thwart deer hunters and squirrel hunters about this time of year. And I began to look at this phenomenon. And I noted that 7 out of 8 trees had fallen across the road. So I think I told you about Chi-Square yesterday. When I first went to Vanderbilt, and I was a new kid from Minden, Louisiana, and they just like to hear me talk, as they said. My advisor was saying that Dick and I were arguing, Dr. Porter and I were arguing about whether the Cubs could win the pennant. And he said, I did a quick chi-square on a napkin and showed him that the Cubs could not win the pennant. And I thought, that is so cool. You can take a beer napkin and figure out whether the Cubs are going to win the pennant. Well, it turns out that chi-square is a cool little statistic that is very, very applicable to this research. It's how you answer yes or no questions. If you had a coin and you were in Oklahoma City and you called me on the phone and you said, I've got this distribution of coin flips, I could run a chi-square real quickly because you expect 50% of them to go either way, and then you subtract your observed. So if 9 out of 10 land on heads, then you divide by that same variable on the bottom, and you look it up in the distribution table, and you know whether or not that coin is rigged, even though you don't have to go to Oklahoma City. So I got the wise idea that it's about a 50-50. You know, if you say the road goes this way, and you got 180 degrees this way, 180 degrees this way, it's about a 50-50 chance in most cases. In fact, it's actually a little better than that because I'm only looking at the ones that really cross the road strongly. I'm not looking at the ones that run almost parallel. Take a look at these guys. This one fell around the tree. Now, how does a tree fall around a neighboring tree? I don't know. This is a new one. That's my friend who wouldn't go to the other area after the stomp. Other block roads, this is the year before. That's not a Sasquatch on the left. It looks like red and interesting, but this is an old one from deer season before. This is a good one. This is from the Caddo site. I just put that in there because it has the X as well. Again, Bossier site, sometimes high up in the tree. Down the trail a piece. This is an ATV trail. That's an interesting one that has a kind of a TP shape to it. And here's some trail blocks that have to do with wild hogs. There's a lot of wild hogs out here. So you can see the hog sign and you can see the trail break. Another tree falls across the road. More hogs and roadblocks. Hog spoor, then fallen tree. Hog and tree. This is the one that got me thinking about the whole thing. Because, you know, this is ATV only
wildlife management area. And clearly this is making it hard for the ATVs to get back there. This is, all right, and I did some preliminary look, and 7 out of 8 wasn't quite enough to have a significant chi-square. But I went back and I thought, well, you know, I'm probably fooling myself. There are probably a lot of trees that fell the other way, and I just didn't count them because I wasn't looking for them. You know, in this business, we have what we call confirmation bias and other threats to validity. We always have to be assessing ourselves whether we're fooling ourselves or not. So we got to do a prospective. So as I do the prospective here, I started adding the 2016 stuff in. And this is from 2016. That's at the trailhead. All right, so when you add the new data in, you end up with a chi-square of 4.03. And down at the bottom, you have your critical values. In science, we always use the 0.05 level or the 0.01 level. That's very common. The 0.05 level means it's a 1 out of 20 chance, 1 out of 20 times this will happen by chance alone. 19 out of 20 times that this happens, you've got a real phenomenon. And the 0.01 level means 1 out of 100. 99 times out of 100, you know, versus 1 chance. So every once in a while you go play roulette and that roulette wheel goes 35 reds in a row. But boy, is that ever rare. And that's the distribution we're talking about here. So my chi-square is 4.03. It is bigger than 3.841, not as big as 6.6. So it is beyond the 0.05 level that this is happening. So something's happening. I can't tell you it's a Sasquatch, but I can tell you it's an anomaly, it's a phenomenon, and it is greater than chance alone that this phenomenon is happening. And the people that will take your research, even, this is the Society for Scientific Exploration. If you want to get published, this is the place to publish your research, because they will, and look, they will even do mind speak, okay? The last time I went to the area, a bedding area, and my first area, and when I took this picture, I've got several pictures, and it appears that the light is bending as it goes up out of there. And I want to remind you that in the South we have a Native American legend about the Nalusafalaya. And the Nalusafalaya are a hairy forest people who, particularly when they're young, they can turn into orbs of light and travel around like that. So, you know, I don't know what to make of it, but when I got this picture with my camera, I thought of that. The other strange picture is, it looks like a vortex. And Ronnie at the Bossier site came to me one time. He said, "Doc, I'm seeing these scars in the air." He called them scars, S-C-A-R, like a scar. He said it's like that. It's like there's a scar in the air, and it's like whirling or something like that. And I said, "Is it like a vortex?" He said, and I didn't, you know. He said, "Yeah, yeah." And so one day, this is where the picture of the leaping blob squatch comes from. So I just happened to catch this. So I don't know what to make of it. I don't know. It's just interesting, and it's part of what some people have referred to as the high strangeness of all this. So there are certain things, and I'm not only an ethologist, I'm a Jungian analytic psychologist. So Jung said, when they asked him about UFOs, he said that he thought they were projections of the collective unconscious. And I went to graduate school, a hard-knot rationalist. I came out a dyed-in-the-wool constructivist. In other words, Heisenberg and the quantum people told us years and years ago that this world is not what we think, that if you don't have an observer, you don't have a phenomenon. It's called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So we are intimately wrapped up with the things that we observe, and in a sense, they are us. So that really should be quite heartening to us in this Sasquatch realm, because all of the things that people get criticized for, as Kwani refers to it, the woo, there's something to that. There's more to that than meets the eye. So
we can look at it from a phenomenological perspective. I can't measure the sizzle. I can tell you I got the sizzle in this circumstance. I don't know how to measure it yet. I don't know how to bring it to the scientific method. So the scientific method is invited to stretch and accommodate, ways of knowing, the epistemology of this. How do we go about shifting into a greater level of knowing, a more broad way of knowing that fits in with the subject at hand? So they do have trickster features, very, very much. You'll run into the trickster. They will try to, and Robert W. Morgan in his book says that first they're going to try to scare you out of the woods. And if they can't do that, they'll start boring you out of the woods. And I've gotten bored out of the woods more than I've gotten scared out of the woods. Whenever I feel the sizzle, whenever they're around and I close my eyes and I meditate, I get this strawberry fields phenomenon. It's a black and white energy that's moving and swirling, and I feel this presence. I don't know if anybody else has that, but I have that. Sometimes I see small lights in the forest when they seem to be around. I do get the sizzle. I've had the rumbly in my tumbly, and I get dysphoria, this sense of like overwhelming dread, and you gotta go, you gotta leave. I've also been overcome with sleep, and I've had to just suddenly take a nap. That's happened. One night I was walking out by myself, and a voice in my head said very clearly, "Please stay on the trail." And I thought, wow, maybe that is what they talk about with mind speak. And of course, I wasn't about to get off the trail. But I had the sense was that there were youngsters about. And the youngsters were checking me out, and I needed to just please cooperate. So I didn't frighten them, and they didn't frighten me. Dream intrusions. Now I've had quite a few of these, where I'm out on in the forest with them, and a lot of times it's a scream, like on the edge of camp, and I wake up and, was that live or was that Memorex, But a lot of dream intrusions. And then there's that animal in forest feeling. One night I was walking out, and it's a strange thing to be surrounded accidentally by coyotes hunting. And they weren't surrounding me this night, but all of a sudden, if you've been out in the woods at night, sometimes the wood just comes unglued. And the woods came unglued, and the coyotes were just going crazy, and the owls were hooting, and just, and I'm thinking, I'm the only one that didn't get the memo. But my notion was if I stay out there with them enough, and one time I said, how long? And there's this saying in my mind that goes way back almost to childhood. You wait a week. And that means you wait a week with a little Hungarian accent or whatever, but you wait a week. And I said in frustration, how long do I have to be out here before, you guys, start letting me see you? And but what that meant to me was just a little bit longer than you're willing to. But the more you do it, I think the more you get into their system and the more that they trust you. This is my experience with it. Other people have, and we now know that as a researcher, your a priori notions of what you go into a research effort with very strongly color the results you get. So that's back to that Heisenberg principle. What you're looking for, you often see. So this is the way it looks to me, and I try to be open to the way other people do it. And I've learned a lot. And I've learned a lot from some of these guys that are talking today. But, my next vector is probably going to be more into the trying to do some research on people that have these intuitive abilities. I'm looking for people who have the ability to tap into this mental communication that apparently they could do. And the Native Americans say they could do it. The Native Americans say they can hypnotize you. Well, guess what? I think I've sampled some of the validity of that. So I'm looking for people right now who have that sixth sense ability, who have that a bit more intuitive than other folks, that could go to the woods with me and say, I think they're over there. So if you know people, send them my way. Thank you very much.